Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. Every week we take a few minutes to chat about our corner of the world, Northwest Ohio. We've talked to politicians, activists, authors, and people with dreams. But the one thing they all have in common is the desire to improve the quality of life for us here in Northwest Ohio. Every few months I like to check in with Toledoan Peggy Daly-Masternak. She has been the leader of a grassroots effort fighting a proposal to widen I-475 up to 8 lanes wide through residential neighborhoods. This past week, the group launched a billboard campaign throughout the area that says, "No to the pollution, no to construction gridlock, and no to the extreme costs." Peggy's grassroots group is strong and growing, and I'm fascinated by the citizen organization that makes it happen. I asked her about that, but first, in this update, Peggy, remind us what stretch of I-475 we're talking about.
5 years ago, ODOT announced to the neighborhood after all the planning was done that they want to expand I-475 between Douglas Road and US 23. For the distance, they want to make it 6 lanes wide, but the segment between Secor and Talmadge, they want 8 lanes wide. And we've been saying this is the most densely residential neighborhood on the entire Beltway. It sliced through residences whenever it was first built. And even in November, the ODOT director out of Bowling Green said at the public hearing that was in front of City Council and County Commissioners that it was wrong to build this through these residential neighborhoods. So our premise would be, why continue to build on wrong?
How, Peggy, were you able to grow such a strong grassroots effort?
Initially, we were doing flyering door to door and brought out, I mean, if everybody, I'm sure everybody does remember the height of the pandemic, July of 2020, with just 5 days of notice, we pulled together an outdoor meeting, social distance, everybody needed to have a mask, and more than 100 people came out to, living in the neighborhoods, because that's where we were flyering, to have our first public meeting. We've held several public meetings since then, and then do a lot of meetings with individual organizations and groups. I'm invited to speak. Really, it runs the gamut. I was with a group of what some folks would consider to be left-leaning people one day, and the very next day I was speaking at an American Legion post, and they're not known for being left. They're definitely a political perspective. So the only reason I bring that up is because this affects everybody. As somebody from that American Legion post said to me, this is a wake-up call that this affects everybody, and it does. So one of our biggest concerns, and we have several, but one of the biggest ones is the growing body of evidence that we're uncovering that shows that the highway pollutants are harmful to everyone. There are many, many school children and childcare facilities in this neighborhood. Some is close. One childcare facility is about 150 feet away from the existing highway. There are many senior residences. There are other places where there are daily workers who are in this area, in the shops and the offices around. And to have that many people exposed to the harmful pollutants is of great concern to us.
Well, certainly they must have done some kind of environmental study before they started moving forward with this project.
That's an interesting statement, London, because when we had the public hearing that we pushed for, it was our constant going to city council and county commissioners and saying, this has never been held to a public hearing. ODOT planned this with what they called their stakeholders. We were never invited. Neighbors were never invited to be a part of that stakeholders group from the early planning stages. And we have a say so. We've invested here. This is where our homes are. So we want to have a public hearing. City Council, county commissioners had a joint public hearing in November. ODOT did not say word one about any health concerns brought by highways. We continued to push various bodies, and in February, I made a presentation in front of the Lucas County Board of Health and told them of my concerns with the health studies that we were uncovering. And they said ODOT would be allowed to come and speak on this as well. And I said, I'd happily sit in on that meeting. I'd love to hear them justify how this improves public health to do this. And ODOT didn't respond the first month they were invited. They were invited a second time. And instead of coming and making a presentation, they emailed to the Board of Health what is called their MSAT analysis. It stands for Mobile Source Air Toxics. It was a qualitative, not quantitative study. So to your very point, measure something, see what the existing situation is, figure out the algorithms or whatever you need to plan for if it's going to be 8 lanes wide, how much more pollution that would be. Nothing was done like that. It was a qualitative study. They cited other studies, but the most important point out of that MSAT analysis is ODOT admits that highways are cancer causing. And they named 9 different toxins that the EPA has already identified, and they listed them as cancer causing, certainly, or probable cancer causing, or possible cancer causing for each one of these toxins. And they did not post this to the public until, again, we insisted you have a project website where you're putting up all your fancy pictures of what you think it's going to look like, put up the MSAT analysis. And finally, that MSAT analysis was posted to their website in June. So the idea that ODOT themselves, for this project, studying this project, doing this qualitative analysis, instead of quantifying anything, they admit it's cancer causing, and it's a lot of other harms as well. And we have the list of studies to prove that. As close as Cincinnati Children's Hospital, they have had a longitudinal study for 25 years where they've been studying children from 6 months old all the way up. Some of these young people are now in their 20s. And they found that it altered the cortical structure and gray matter of children's brains. They did one part of their study was to assess anxiety and depression in 12-year-olds, brought again by a close proximity to highways. So Cincinnati is doing amazing work in saying highways we should really rethink how we're building, how we're using, what the alternatives are to endless highways, because the health harms are in the extreme.
Well, let me ask you another question about prior studies before ODOT decided to go ahead with this project. What is the need? Are we trying to entice more truck traffic between the port and other markets within the state and the country? Is it that we have traffic backups along the expressway? What's the rationale here?
The public hearing that I spoke of, they talked about the increase in trucking traffic that's anticipated. And then shortly after that, the state of Ohio released February of this year a strategic transportation and development analysis where they examined they divided Ohio into 5 sections: North, South, and Central Ohio, East and West. So Northwest Ohio had its own section. They anticipate that there will be a 59% increase in trucking vehicle miles traveled in Northwest Ohio, likely due in part, I think they're hanging a lot of hope on the Gordie Howe Bridge, which opens this month between Canada and Detroit, and they're hanging a whole lot of hope that that's going to bring an increase in trucking traffic south and through Toledo, and the other parts of Northwest Ohio. But definitely, everybody knows how close we are coming down I-75. And so, excuse me, so the trucking traffic is definitely going to increase. In that same report, London, they admit population is declining in Toledo. They anticipate that by 2055, a decline of 89,000 more residents out of the city of Toledo. It's declining in the suburban areas around Toledo. And so what you have is this imbalance between residents and trucking traffic, is likely going to occur if ODOT predictions come true. The other thing that was very enlightening from that report was that they named 5 cities specifically, Toledo being one of them. The 3 C's, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, and then Canton, Ohio, were the 5 cities. And they said that in those 5 cities, right now, between 26 and 50% of the households in those cities are 0-car households. They also state in that same report that there is a desperate need for mass transit to improve our workforce opportunities, and yet we're not doing that. ODOT's biennial budget right now is only dedicating 1.1% to public transit. So you have a declining population, you have workforce that can't get to work because they either don't own a car or don't have access to public transit. Therefore, we can't expand our economic opportunities, and we're hanging a whole lot of opportunity, I guess, on the idea that 59% more trucking will be bypassing Toledo to go to parts wherever. It makes no sense. It's backwards from every angle that I can look at it from, and I've been looking at it for 5 years.
I'm London Mitchell. We are in contact this week with Peggy Daly-Masternak of the I-475 Neighborhood Coalition. Their effort is to fight a proposal to widen I-475 from Secor Road to Talmadge Road.
I have a very supportive family, so I want to acknowledge them first and foremost. I dig deep, and I go deep into research, and sometimes I'm there for hours, and all of a sudden a plate of fruit is brought to me, and with a reminder that, you have to stop, you have to eat, you're definitely gonna, be important to take care of yourself. So I'm very, very grateful for a very supportive family. I have a close network of really great friends who are supportive in, backing me up, showing up for meetings, showing up for hearings, to bring their own perspective. And oftentimes it just, taps on to my perspective, and just the sum is greater than its parts. The neighborhoods here, I've loved living in Toledo. I've been here for 40 years. I'm not originally from here. And I just think it's a great city, and I want to see better things for Toledo all around. But that has to begin with the idea that residents matter. And it's insulting to think that a city hall, as you call it, a government entity, a corporation, a developer can come into Toledo and say, we'll benefit by this. We don't live here. We're going to benefit by this, and it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of you. So, I would love to see Toledo strengthen itself more towards the idea of we can say no to things. The highway situation across the country, there's a whole group called Freeway Fighters, meets monthly and discusses what's going on in city after city after city. Recently, as we've located at least 12 cities where their city council has stood up. Sometimes most of them are unanimous decisions to say to departments of transportation in their state, no, we're not going to do that. Okay, we're writing a resolution to tell you we oppose this. And in at least a dozen recent cities, that has happened, that the projects has been stopped. And the closest one that I can think of right now is Ann Arbor. So the Ann Arbor City Council unanimously opposed MDOT's expansion plan for US 23. And the last I know, the project got pulled. Recently in Detroit, the neighborhoods stood up against an expansion to a spur off of 75 called 375. And as many of these highways were created, that one was just going to further harm a historic neighborhood of Black ownership, Black businesses, Black residents, and they worked together to say no. So anybody that would want to do grassroots organizing, I encourage them to just start talking to their friends and their neighbors and bring them on board and do the deep level research. We have the internet, I guess, for a reason, because there's really a lot out there that people can tap into. If it like our MSAT analysis example, if you don't see that it's posted, it's public record. It needs to be posted so that people know that there's health concerns already admitted by ODOT. And, you know, those types of things take a lot of work, but they're very, very rewarding. At the end of the day, you can lay your head down and say, you know what, I did everything I think I should have done today.
Peggy's email address is i.475group@gmail.com. That's i.475group@gmail.com. I'm London Mitchell, inviting you to join us next time when we continue staying in contact.
Previous installments of Staying in Contact with London Mitchell are available on the Stream 419 app, Spotify, and londonmitchell.news.